Testing.
All right, good afternoon, everybody. I'm going to welcome you all to the Sustainability, Infrastructure, and Development Committee meeting for August 28th, 2024. We are at the point where we are finishing up items of business that were deferred from the August 13th meeting. I will now call on Will Short, clerk, to conduct the roll call.
Thank you, Chair James. Regional Chair Redmond.
Present.
Councillor Craig.
Present.
Councillor Deutschman. Councillor Erb. Councillor Foxton.
Present.
Councillor Harris. Councillor Hunink.
Here.
Chair James.
Present.
Councillor Liggett. Councillor McCabe. Councillor Nowak. Councillor Solonen. Councillor Shantz.
Present.
Councillor Vrbanovic. Councillor Williams. And Councillor Wolf. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I would like to acknowledge that the land in which we gather today is the traditional territory of the Haudenosaunee, Anishinaabe, and Chinanton peoples. We acknowledge the enduring presence of the Indigenous peoples that we share this land with today, their ongoing achievements and contributions to our community. Are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Okay, seeing none. There are no presentations, no delegations. We are moving on to the regular agenda item. So we are at 6.1, strategic priority, equitable services and opportunities. I would like to call upon Doug Spooner, Acting Commissioner of Transportation, to provide a staff presentation for this report.
Yeah, through you, and thank you, Chair. Council, I'm joined today by Daryl Spencer, the Manager of Transportation Engineering for the region. Daryl's going to take us through the presentation on community safety zones, how they can be implemented, and how it relates to a number of other road safety initiatives underway. We'll end the presentation with a recommendation, and at that time, Daryl and I will welcome questions. Thank you. Over to you, Daryl.
Great, thanks, Doug. Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you for the opportunity to present this to you, and thank you to you, Madam Chair. If I can go to the next slide. So we're talking about community safety zones today, and just to provide a little bit of background on that, this dates back to February of 2023, where we had a request from Council to investigate the expansion of our automated speed enforcement program to include community safety zones, including to the entire region. So we've taken a little bit of time to kind of put together a response to this request. Next slide, please. So what are community safety zones? Well, they're defined within the Highway Traffic Act as follows, and that is that the council of a municipality may by bylaw designate a part of a highway under its jurisdiction as a community safety zone if, in its council's opinion, public safety is of special concern on that part of the highway. So that's the framework around what is a community safety zone. We'll talk a little bit more about what a community safety zone looks like. So the first part is around the notion of a region-wide community safety zone. And our conclusion is that we advise against this, and there's a few reasons for that. Firstly, it doesn't really comply with the HTA definition, particularly the part of a highway section or where public safety is of special concern. So it's really intended to be on particular parts of the highways. It also risks diminishing a public safety tool by losing its intended effect. Essentially, if everywhere is a community safety zone, then is anywhere a community safety zone. And third, it has proven historically to be ineffective without supplementary measures such as physical roadway changes or automated speed enforcement or some kind of enhanced enforcement. And this essentially results in additional resource pressure on Waterloo Region Police Services. So instead of a region-wide community safety zone, our recommendation is that we designate community safety zones only in priority locations around the region. Next slide. So what do priority locations look like? Well, we actually engaged a consulting firm to help us determine this. And the reason for it is because there's a lot happening around the province, and we wanted to make sure we're kind of operating in somewhat in lockstep with what we're seeing around the province. So this work included 3 major steps. The first was to review the best practices and the strategies that are adopted around the province, including some of our neighboring municipalities. Then from that, we developed a warrant that was suitable for our roadways, so kind of tailored to the region in certain ways. And then the third step was to kind of test that warrant against a number of select locations to make sure it makes sense, to make sure everything's not screening in and that everything isn't screening out. Next slide, please. So from that work, we ultimately developed, and we're recommending that staff adopt a 2-step Region of Waterloo Community Safety Zone warrant. So those 2 steps are, firstly, an eligibility assessment, and second, a points-based risk factor assessment. Next slide. So the eligibility assessment, so this is sort of the pre-screening part of it. What we'll do is we'll look at a location and we'll look at the adjacent land uses and check that they're pedestrian focused. So is there an elementary or high school, parks, playgrounds, community centers, hospitals, daycare centers, senior centers, and senior residences? And more than just adjacent, we're looking at desire lines. So we're going to be looking at do these land uses result in a lot of pedestrians that want to cross or be in close proximity to a regional roadway. So it allows a little bit of flexibility in terms of that adjacent land use. We think it would be eligible on roadways where there is 60 kilometers per hour or less speed limits. And we have a record of poor speed compliance on those roads. It should be used when there's an appropriate speed limit in place and no other traffic calming measures present or planned. So that's kind of critical. We use automated speed enforcement generally when we don't have a better tool available to us immediately to ensure that we get the low speeds that we're trying to achieve in that location. So if there are plans for other traffic calming measures, such as a road narrowing or any sort of measure that might result in lowering speeds, then a community safety zone probably isn't the right tool. And lastly, we want that space to be physically capable to receive a municipal speed camera. There are physical limitations in terms of curvature of the roadway and things like that, trees, things that might limit us from being able to use a speed camera. Next slide, please. So then if it passes the eligibility criteria, we move into the step 2, which is the points-based risk factor assessment. And essentially there's 8 different risk factors that we're going to quantify. Things like the daily traffic volumes, the pedestrian volumes, the presence of adjacent land uses that are going to generate pedestrian activity. Are there a lot of heavy trucks? Do we have issues with traffic speeds in the area? Is there a history of collisions? Is there a high frequency of intersections and accesses? And is there a presence of sidewalks? So for each of these, for example, daily traffic volumes, more traffic equals higher risk. So we assess a risk factor to each of these factors. For any location that scores 70% or higher, then we would deem it warranted for potentially a community safety zone. Next slide. So how do community safety zones and municipal speed cameras correlate? Well, given our history, we have a long history of community safety zones in the province. They date back to the late 1990s. And what we observed in the region and what's been observed generally around the province is that they're largely not effective without some sort of enforcement or something to really help achieve the goals of that community safety zone. And so to that point, our recommendation is that community safety zones are always linked to municipal speed cameras, and that further, the community safety zone is implemented in parallel with and around the same time as the activation of that municipal speed camera. And the reason for that, as I mentioned, we've had issues in the past, but we also think it's important to have consistency around our network. So if you see a community safety zone, you know that that's a critical section of the roadway, and we're going to be enforcing it with a municipal speed camera because that's the most effective way to ensure that we achieve the goals of that community safety zone. Next slide, please. So I'm going to pause for 1 second here and talk about the municipal speed cameras and the program name. We've done some work, a group of us have done some work to think about the name of the program. Historically, we've called this automated speed enforcement. But moving forward, we've adopted the municipal speed camera name, and there's a few reasons for that. One, it provides kind of clear and plain language that we hope the public can understand quite easily. Secondly, it communicates the purpose and the focus of the intended outcome. So it's about reducing speed, safer municipalities. It's not about enforcement. We're trying to remove a little bit of that heavy-handedness in the program title. Third, it increases familiarity. So you see on the slide, there's the signage that we have out on the street. That sign is required in the HTA wherever we use the municipal speed cameras. So we're proposing to just basically match the wording on the signs. So moving forward, when we say municipal speed camera, that's technically interchangeable with automated speed enforcement, but this is the program name that we're recommending to move forward with. Next slide. So what about community safety zones and school zones? Well, we recommend layering in a community safety zone at any school zone where there is a municipal speed camera in use. The added benefit of this will help us to determine which of the school zones will actually be eligible for a municipal speed camera, because we'll be running each school zone through the same community safety zone warrant analysis. If there's not a speeding problem in a school zone, then a camera probably isn't a solution that we should be pursuing there. So we're recommending layering in community safety zones and school zones together. Now again, this applies on regional roadways where we have jurisdiction. Next slide, please. So why do we recommend this layering? Well, partly because we're trying to achieve safer roads near all schools. So the Highway Traffic Act limits us in terms of our designation of school zones. There's very specific limitations. Well, using community safety zones will allow us to apply the intended impact on some regional roads that are near a school, but we can't actually get over the line with a school zone definition. So community safety zone, and again, in the spirit of being consistent around our application of the cameras everywhere, we recommend community safety zones and school zones in parallel. Also, we're ensuring a consistent and best practice approach with other municipalities in Ontario. So I think, as far as I know, all the other municipalities in Ontario that are using municipal speed cameras, even in school zones, are using community safety zones as well. It's just the way that the province has largely decided, or the municipalities in this province have largely decided to use this program. The third reason, back one more slide, yep, sorry. The third reason, with the new administrative penalties program that the region will be bringing online later this year, the speeding fines from our municipal speed camera program, they're going to be doubled regardless of where the infraction occurs, meaning whether it's in a community safety zone or a school zone. And the benefit of that community safety zone signage is that it includes that fines increased notice. So we're effectively communicating with the public that if they were to receive a traffic infraction there, that it would be subjected to the doubled fines later in the HTA. And then the fourth reason, if the municipal speed camera program expands beyond school areas in the future, we feel it's important that the sites all look the same for efficient and consistent operation. Next slide, please. And next slide. So just the summary of the recommendations. So there's 4 recommendations coming out of this report at this time. The first one is to adopt the 2-step region and Waterloo Community Safety Zone warrant as outlined in this report. The second is to direct staff to identify which regional school zones should have community safety zone designation added in parallel with the municipal speed camera changes planned for late 2024. The third is to adopt the strategy of using a community safety zone designation at all school zones along regional roadways that are to be equipped with municipal speed cameras in the future. And the fourth is to direct staff to use the newly adopted community safety zone warrant to identify a comprehensive list of prospective community safety zones along regional roads, including those not centered around a school zone, and report back to council with options for implementing those community safety zones, including associated impacts to the staffing and resources for the region's municipal speed camera program. So for that fourth recommendation, we anticipate it'll take 6 to 9 months to identify a comprehensive list of community safety zones. As you can imagine, that's a rather data-intensive exercise as we need to check speeds and land uses throughout our network. Next slide, please. So in terms of the implications for the area municipalities, the recommendations in our report, they apply for regional roadways only, essentially the roadways where we have jurisdiction. It's our opinion that consistency across all roadways in the region, regardless of the jurisdiction, would be best for the integrity of the region's municipal speed program and just in general for public consumption. And thirdly, following direction from council, we'll work with the staff from the area municipalities to develop a plan for the potential use of community safety zones on city and township roads. And then I think that's it. So time for questions.
Thank you, Daryl. There are a few questions from councillors. Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair James. Thank you for the excellent report. In the past, I felt that opposition to municipal speed cameras is rather funny because if you don't speed, you don't get a ticket. However, various councillors have pointed out to me that everybody makes mistakes regardless of income level. And so if you're someone with moderate to high income, maybe the fine of the municipal speed camera won't affect you as much if you are low income. And so I'm wondering what consideration has been given to the levels of the fines, or a warning versus a fine, or like, is there room for mistakes in this system?
Yeah, through you, Chair, to the councillor. The actual fines for the speeding fines are set by the province. So we at the region don't have the ability to influence that directly. What we could do is advocate with the province for a system that includes some piece of equity in the fine amounts. But as of today, we don't have the control to influence the speeding fine amounts.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you, Chair James, and through you, thank you, Daryl and staff for the work on this. I really appreciate it. Just a couple of things. Is it fair to say that when you're referencing pedestrian volumes in some areas where maybe pedestrian volumes aren't terribly high, is there often a latent demand, or do you have a sense of what the latent demand might be? Like, because what I've seen in Waterloo is often, particularly around a school, there's a lot of people that don't walk because it's, particularly when they're crossing regional roads, because it's not safe. So how do you account for that in the data collection that you're going to do, that latent demand?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So in the risk factor scoring, we tried to capture that with there's one of the factors was around the presence of pedestrian generators in the area. So even if there's not a lot of pedestrians today, we recognize that there's probably a reason for it. Maybe they don't feel safe, they don't feel comfortable. So we tried to capture that by looking at what the land uses are in the area. Do they perhaps hint that there could be a high demand of pedestrians if they felt safer in the area? So we don't necessarily, like in the warrant itself, we don't look at the latent demands, but we have sort of a proxy factor as well, which kind of addresses the potential demand by looking at the land uses in the area.
Okay, thanks. I think that's really important for us to think about because I know we discussed probably a few months ago a few areas in Waterloo particularly where there's not a lot of walkers to school, but there's a lot of residential area, and so implementing some traffic safety and traffic calming and pedestrian crossings I think is going to have a really important impact. So I think that's something that when we look at this, we should keep in mind that the numbers often aren't capturing the whole picture, right? Because there's people that don't walk or cycle or whatever method they want to use because high traffic volumes or high traffic speeds, driver speeds, are making areas unsafe. So I just wanted to also just make sure that I understand this. So as another example in Waterloo, there's a primary or an elementary school that the entrance to it is off a city street, so a residential street, but the playground and another entrance is off of Northfield Drive. So would that be something that you would look at to say, because students in the area may be having to cross the regional road Northfield to get to the school, that's an area then that you would look at potentially putting this community safety zone? Is that correct?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, that's actually bang on. So we're looking at not just the actual position of the accesses, which is that limitation in the Highway Traffic Act with the school zones, and looking at the desire lines. So if we know that there's a school, but there's a huge population of students that are crossing a regional road, and maybe the school is not literally right on that regional road, then we would consider that as an appropriate land use, and we would run it through the full warrant to see if it's eligible.
Great, thanks. And I appreciate that you're looking at other places like recreation and centers and seniors residences and daycares and all that, and places like that. So I really appreciate that. And just one last question.
Councillor McCabe, I'm going to just ask you to get into the queue again because there's quite a few.
I was just wondering if you could remind us what the fine is for we know we've seen some people cut, or some people have cut these down, what the fine is for that. Thank you, Chair.
Okay.
Through you, Chair, the fine for, can you clarify?
For people who
vandalizing?
vandalize them.
I'm actually not sure about that. I'd have to check with the police on that. I'm not actually sure on that.
Thank you. Councillor Salonen.
Thank you. Thank you very much for the report. Just one comment to Councillor McCabe's last question. If you're referring to the Wilmot one on Snyder's Road that keeps on getting cut down, my understanding is police continue to investigate, but last that I had connected with them, we don't know who's actually doing it, so we can't place any vandalism fines. Anyways, back to my actual questions, though. Thank you for bringing forward the report. I guess I'm just looking for a little more clarity. My interpretation of the community safety zones was more so to apply in scenarios like, I'll give Hayesville Road, like Hayesville, for example, which is a regional road, but it's a country road where you go 80, secondary highway, a throughway, and then suddenly you have a settlement of about 20 or 30 houses, including a daycare space and a community space. I'm just wondering the application, like once we get into towns and communities and the cities, what the benefit is of actually applying it there versus shouldn't we want drivers to be vigilant anyways? I guess, is it just watering down the benefits of the way at least I interpreted it being in more higher risk areas versus areas where roads are designed for people to go slow and there is a lot of density?
Through you, Chair. I guess like for citing the example that you're talking about. I think you said Hayden, right? Hayesville Road, yeah. Like we would run a situation like that. So like if you have a small settlement area and there is a community center, or there are some of those indicators, we would still run that through the warrant, and there's a chance it would screen in. So like the idea is to try to capture those settlement areas if it has some of those features that we're talking about. Now, I understand the concern around we want lower speeds through those areas as well. It's just, I think you hit the nail on the head. We're slightly concerned about the watering down of the community safety zone designation and the effectiveness of it. And if it doesn't apply to a certain location, perhaps there's another tool in the toolbox that we could look into for achieving the lower speeds that are, we're hoping to see in those sort of settlement areas.
Sorry, I think I maybe didn't articulate effectively. I was saying those are zones that I understand, and in fact, I believe that one is a community safety zone. Those are areas that I understand the community safety zone are for. When I was reading the report, I felt like we're trying to have community safety zones across the whole community, whether it's regional or lower tier. So I'm trying to figure out why, as well as then we get into doubling of fines, which a huge accusation we already get for having speed cameras is that we're just trying to profiteer off of people. And the doubling of fines to me really is something that I'm not looking to wade into. So I guess I'm just trying to figure out why the justification. If you're speeding, you're speeding, whether it's in front of a school zone in July or if it's in front of someone's house in February. Like, I'm just trying to understand the rationale for wanting to work with the area municipalities to really over-enforce something that is already illegal and enforceable other ways.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Yeah, I mean, it's a good question. Yeah, so in terms of like the area municipalities and how we see this rolling out with the area municipalities, I don't know how it's going to play out in terms of the area municipalities and their roadways and our settlement areas. I know with the we're focusing at this stage on the regional roads, which tends to have higher speeds and less effective traffic calming measures available to achieve those speeds. But yeah, point taken. At the end of the day, we can make a recommendation around a community safety zone and potentially automated enforcement, but it would ultimately be up to council to pursue that recommendation if they felt like that was the best approach.
Doug, did you want to weigh in at all on this?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Councillor Salonen, I think you've hit a really important, well, two really important points. The first is this a program in which the region is looking to profit? And the answer to that is absolutely not. This is money that will be reinvested into safety initiatives. I will be at this table and with my team unapologetic about road safety. That's why we're looking at initiatives like roundabouts, the roundabout safety pilot, truck bans. All of these things are intended to arrive at a place where we no longer accept serious injury and death in our roadways. So the money that will be generated through this program is to reinvest in safety and to drive to that target. It's a little bit back to Councillor Hunick's point. I'll appreciate that fines disproportionately impact people, just as a comment, but the doubling of fines, as well as the signage that goes up, the school zone sign, the speed limit sign, the municipal speed camera sign, are all intended to indicate to people that this is an area of importance. Councillor McCabe, you hit it on the head. Latent demand is the thing that is impacting our community. Latent demand for those online or those in the is people will use a transportation facility if it is made easier or safer, and they will not use it if it is made more difficult or less safe. So we may not actually know today what the demand is to access school zones by active transportation means. So I think just to land the point again, it is an unapologetic pursuit of road safety, and any tool we have available, in which I think community safety zones is one that will prove to be effective. Thank you.
Thank you. If I can just make one point of clarification. I was not at all accusing staff of trying to profiteer, the region trying to profiteer. I'm simply articulating feedback I often hear from the community already about the speed cameras. So I just want everyone to know that, but thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Urbanovic.
Thank you very much, and thanks to staff for the report. On the issue of doubling of fines, this was the first that I've heard that by virtue of going the AMPS route for handling this, that is going to automatically require us to double fines. And that, to be frank, is a concern for me, because I'm already hearing concerns from people, as Councillor Salonen indicated, and I'm sure others have as well, around the fines that are being imposed, and to now all of a sudden think that they're going to be doubled. And I just want to put that in perspective. An 11 kilometer an hour over the limit fine would typically be $27.50 plus a 15% victim surcharge payment. Doubling it would make it $55, and with the payment would make it $63.25. 16 kilometers over, and I'll reference these numbers in a moment. It would be 40. Doubling would make it 80, 92. If you're going 20 over, it's 75, 150 doubled, and $172.50 if you have the victim impact, the 15% that's added on. So the doubling is certainly going to generate much more revenue here that, as we're hearing today, will be reinvested. But this is the first I'm hearing that we're required to double them. And so what alternatives do we have? Because I can tell you at the area municipalities, while there's support of these in some areas, there's increasingly concerns being raised, and a doubling will probably want to see. I can predict that many members on my council will likely to not want to see them installed. So can you clarify on the amps and the doubling?
Yeah, through you, Chair. So stepping back to last year, staff made the recommendation around adopting the administrative penalties program to deal with the municipal speed camera program. And the reason for that is because the volume of tickets has become such that our POA court can't handle it. It's going to bog down our court. Yep. And with the request from council to look at a rapid expansion into the future, we can't expand the program without adopting administrative penalties. So to answer the question, the only way to not double the fines would be to not adopt an administrative penalties program. Under the HTA, then the speeding fines in a school zone are not doubled. But if we are to continue to stay the course and expand the program, then we need to adopt the administrative penalties program, and that carries the doubled fines with it.
So, I think we're going to have a conversation around this, Madam Chair, because this is certainly news to me, and I'm guessing others, that I think we're going to need to be able to address. My second
And
point.
just to
yeah.
clarify, I believe there was a report on the ANF agenda today where the second part of your question about the fines, we'll be able to discuss it there as well. Okay?
We can, yeah, I mean, it's all connected though, right? So it's difficult to separate them out that way. Part of the concern and issue as well in the community has become around thresholds. I know that, it's generally well known that police, when they do enforcement, the threshold is not always, but generally, they don't pull people over for less than 16 kilometers an hour. And then they exercise some discretion, which is, I think, the question that Councillor Hunick was getting at or Councillor Williams earlier. We're hearing that that's not going to be able to be the case. We're also hearing, and again, I'm getting this through Facebook and so on, from people's own ticket experience, it seems that we're issuing them for speeds less than that. Is it fair to say that the threshold that we're using at the region is below what's commonly used by the police?
Through you, the chair. So I have to answer that question a little bit carefully because we're not supposed to be talking about the actual threshold. I will say the threshold that we use was established sort of amongst a provincial working group of all the municipalities who are using the municipal speed camera programs. And so the threshold that we're using is the same as all the other automated speed enforcement programs throughout the province. So I can't comment on potential thresholds with the police. I will say we don't capture everybody that's going 1-2 kilometers an hour over the speed limit. Obviously, we had to use a little bit more discretion than that, but I can't get specific around the actual numbers because it jeopardizes the integrity of the enforcement program. So I hope that answers your question, but the thresholds are something that, like I said, we've just essentially worked with all the municipalities around the province to sort of establish.
Okay, I'll leave it at that on that question. Again, I can only go by what people's own experience are that they're presumably sharing, and I'm assuming they're being truthful about it. So, presumably there's at least people being captured at amounts less than 16, it seems. On the name issue, I guess that would be in the finance report, so I'll leave that because I do have some concerns around that. But just to be absolutely clear here, what's being proposed in this report is that everything would be doubled in a school zone, but it is by virtue of amps anyway. And in addition to that, we would be, sorry, I'm just going back to the recommendations. In addition to that, when it comes to the community safety zones, if area municipalities had concerns with that doubling in their school zones, the only thing they can do is instruct the region that they don't want a municipal enforcement camera on that municipal street. Is that correct?
Through you, Chair. Yeah, that's correct. Yeah.
Okay. And can you just let us know what out of the total number of cameras that are being proposed, how many are being proposed on regional streets and how many on municipal streets?
Through you, Chair. That's a good question. I don't know the numbers off the top of my head. I think, so the program expansion calls for about 175 cameras, and I think about roughly around 40 of those, I believe, are on regional roads. The remainder would be for area municipal roadways. Now, I should point out that we're working as partners with area municipalities on this program. So the intent is never to put a speed camera on an area municipal roadway where they don't want it or they don't feel like they need it. So it's a collaborative effort. At this stage, we have a plan that allows for up to 175 cameras to be implemented in school zones. And again, at least for regional sites, we would filter out which ones actually should have a camera using this community safety zone warrant. And then for the ones that are dedicated towards the area municipalities, if for whatever reason, we don't have 175 schools that need that need cameras, then, well, there's potential to use them in other community safety zones that might come up in our exercise to look at community safety zones outside of school areas.
Okay, thank you, Madam Chair, for your indulgence with my questions. I'll make some comments at the appropriate time.
Okay, Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Chair. I have many concerns about this. First of all, is your intention to make all school zones community safety zones? First.
Through you, Chair. No, we would only add a community safety zone if to a school zone if a municipal speed camera is warranted. If we're putting a municipal speed camera there, so if we run through the community safety zone warrant, again, we're talking about regional roads specifically here. If we run a school zone through a community safety zone warrant and it fails, then we would not add a community safety zone there or a municipal speed camera there. That's the intention.
Okay, so when you were talking about community safety zone warrant, would you be applying that? Are those the criteria that you'd be looking at with the school?
Through you, Chair, yes, that's correct.
Okay, I like the idea of the warrant because I think we're maybe equating, the speeding and school zones with the idea, like if we looked at statistics, I'm not sure we'd find many children actually hit in front of schools compared to hit by people turning right, those kinds of things. I am concerned that when the public feel they are being treated unfairly, they react. And I think that's the problem with the doubling fines. How many cameras have been damaged in Waterloo region? I know when Guelph did it, they had many.
Through you, Chair, I don't have the exact number. I know we have the one specific location in Wilmot that has been damaged a few times. A few of the cameras have suffered relatively minor damage over the duration of the program to this point, but for the most part, they do remain intact and operational. So it is a relatively rare experience, again, setting aside the Wilmot location. It does happen, but we are working with our vendor and with the police to try to find ways to mitigate some of those camera site security risks.
How many cameras do we have right now operational?
Right now we have 4 cameras operational.
Oh, and so we have 4 cameras and one is having a problem, so that's a quarter, right?
Through your chair, just to clarify, there are 16 sites, and we're currently rotating 4 cameras around. It happens to have turned out that there was not a camera at that site when it was damaged. So no camera was actually damaged. The housing equipment, the pole, that was actually damaged. So there are 16 sites, but we're using 4 cameras right now.
Okay, all right. I guess I just think that these days affordability of life in general is something that affects so many people. And if they get, the double of fines and our speed limit, the lowest is 40 kilometers right now.
Through your chair, on regional roads, the lowest speed limits are 40 kilometers an hour, correct?
In Cambridge, for instance, I think they just said 30 kilometers in front of a school.
Through you, Chair, I believe Cambridge has adopted 30 kilometers an hour in front of some of their schools, yes.
Okay, and I think that's where a lot of problems happened in Guelph, which it's very difficult, especially 24/7, for people to maintain that. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Chair James. A couple of questions. First off, I just want to say that this whole initiative is council-driven. I appreciate Acting Commissioner Spooner's comments about being unapologetic, but council will be unapologetic, and you don't have to apologize to anybody in the community with respect to this. So this is council-driven, and council oversees, and this is why we're glad to have these criteria here in front of us. And I'll want to get some clarification on what Councillor Urbanovic was talking about later on. A couple of questions. With respect to criteria, I see the emphasis on the pedestrian-generated elements in the community. And I have a concern about limiting our focus to that. I appreciate the issue is pedestrians in the area, and we're trying to reduce speed for fear of pedestrians. But if I think about, for example, the Roseville community, as Councillor Foxton would know, I can't think of any pedestrian-generating features that you list here, and yet we have a community safety zone in Roseville, because in the settlement areas in the township, and referring sort of back to what Councillor Salonen was talking about, people walk from house to house by the roadway, and we do have those situations. And I think that, I submit that Roseville probably would not be approved as a community safety zone if we applied this criteria that you've suggested here. So I have a concern about that and the weighting that it's being given with respect to that, and want to look at that. One of the things I wanted to find out too was, and maybe I appreciate the sign change, at least people will know who to go to complain about these speed cameras, but maybe we should say regional municipal, because then you have this two-tier, and we don't want people going to our area municipalities to question that, and then we'll get the emails from the local councillors to the area regional councillors. So that's something, and I see there's some head nods in agreement on that point. I also wanted to know community input. I didn't really see community input as a criteria in assessing these things, and along with that is area municipality. So maybe you could just comment on that. What are we doing about community input and area municipality input on the selection of these sites? Because I think it's incumbent on us to make sure that whatever the region looks to, that we have area municipality input with respect to those items. And just the last thing I just want to say, as a personal injury lawyer, I see the outcome of people who are hit, and the cost to the family with respect to this issue far exceeds whatever fine someone is receiving for speeding in the community. And that to me this is a significant priority. I support us getting speed cameras out as much as possible in areas of concern in the community. But again, sorry, if you could just comment on the question I asked about area, municipality input, and community input.
Yeah, through your chair. So as far as area municipality input, it's a challenging question, because like specifically we're talking about regional roads where we have the region of Waterloo has jurisdiction. So we, in terms of if you're talking about a litigation case or something, like the region has to stand up to the recommendations there. So I can appreciate there would be some input from the area municipalities, but at the end of the day, with the regional roads, the region has to make a decision what to do with those roads. So, point taken, we can take it back, and when we run the warrant and we look at prospective locations or community safety zones, we can talk with our area municipal partners. I should say, I don't know if it really came across my presentation, we do coordinate with them on a lot of the things that we do closely. So, and then as far as public input, we approach this sort of with a proactive lens. So you'll notice in the recommendations we're saying we're going to look at the entire network and try to identify preemptively where community safety zones are appropriate, rather than looking for public input. And the reason for that is because what we're seeing with issues around traffic calming and speed compliance and public input is that it tends to favor certain demographics over others. If we relied specifically on input, what we normally see is the more affluent members of the society bringing their concerns, and their voices are heard more than perhaps the less privileged in the society. So our way around that was to try to look at the entire region and proactively identify where these community safety zones should go. So now that is kind of a one-time exercise. We're going to give a snapshot in time. Moving forward, we do plan to set up some engagement opportunities through the region's website. So if the public has an area that they would like us to look at, maybe over time and things change, we know that the network changes, patterns change and all that kind of stuff, then of course we would receive that input and look at it. But before just opening this up for requests, we thought it would be a better solution to to proactively look at it. The other advantage to proactively looking at community safety zones is understanding what impact that's going to have on the municipal speed camera program, because every time we introduce a municipal speed camera that has a staffing and resource implication, we have to source that camera. We have to understand if we have the processing and administrative capacity to deal with that. So in the short term, the idea is to kind of look at everywhere, and then in the long term, you know, we would be receptive to receiving comments from the public.
Doug, did you want to weigh in at all?
Yeah, through you, Chair, Councillor Deutschman, I think it's a critical point, and I think as you know, we work for the public, and so public input is a critical one. I'm a little bit ahead of Daryl on our communications plan here, so I'll fill in some gaps. We have a website in place today called Safe Roads. We've delivered that in partnership with WRPS. I feel there's a public input gap that we've got across our transportation work. We've got it on the GRT side that would look at things like potholes, line painting, speed, grass cutting, all of those pieces of community input where someone will say you might have missed something here. Same with community safety zones. So we've got until November to stand this program up, and the goal is to have that site ready to go as well. And not to take away from Daryl's answer, I think he's right. We are being proactive, but I feel there's a critical role for community input. So we'll make sure we can gather that.
Thank you. Just a follow-up. Thanks for the answer. There's a lot of things in there, but first of all, I just want to say, I don't feel it's a litigation issue with respect to the region and the area municipality if we're trying to figure out where community safety zones have to go. You're talking about the other end of it. I'm talking about getting them created. The other thing is, it seems to me, and I just want to get clarity here, are we waiting to have speed cameras before we create a community safety zone?
Through your chair, that's correct. We're recommending we don't add the community safety zone designation until a camera is ready to go there. And again, that's because the signage in and of itself doesn't actually achieve anything. We've seen historically it doesn't impact driver behavior. So we're suggesting that every time we designate a community safety zone, it's in parallel with the municipal speed camera. So that means a strategic rollout of the program.
Well, okay. From personal experience, my driving is affected by the sign in Roseville that says fines doubled, community safety zone. So I don't understand this comment that says that if there's a sign that says community safety zone, fines doubled, but there's no camera, that has no impact on drivers in an area. So, I mean, that's my personal experience. I don't know how Councillor Foxton drives the Ladybug through Roseville, but you know, I'm concerned about that. Slowly. I am concerned about tying them one to the other, because we're rolling out 175 cameras. And we have, I don't know, what do we have right now in the community? 16? 4. Huh? 4 with 16 zones. So how fast are we rolling out? Like, how many years are we going to be rolling out 175 cameras?
Through you, Chair. So the plan is to hit that 175 camera mark by the end of 2028. So we do have an aggressive plan to expand. You know, we thought we'd be further along than we are, but we've run into some hiccups with the program this year, and you know, there's been some significant changes. So later this year, the expansion will start, and then we'll be expanding at a rate of around 36 cameras per year, starting in 2025.
Okay, thank you. And just to clarify, there are 16 cameras, but 4 are operational currently.
Through your chair, yeah, that there are 16 sites and 4 cameras rotating amongst the 16
Perfect,
sites.
okay. Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. I think I can forego my question, given the length of the rollout.
Okay, Councillor Williams, and then we're on to the second round in the queue, and I'm conscious of time given we've got a long night. So after this next round, then we'll hopefully call a question here. Councillor Williams.
Hopefully I'll be quick. Mine are just some clarifications. So as of right now, we have the 16 and then the 4 cameras that are working, but are they doubled because they're in school zones, or are people just receiving the fines set out by the province?
Through you, Chair, they're not doubled today. They're just in school zones which don't have the community safety zone designation, so they're not doubled today.
Okay, and then so also, if I was looking at it correctly, in the provincial chart, it seems as you go up and you speed more, it's doubling itself over and over incrementally. So I feel like there's already a doubling kind of built in. So this would be quadrupling, or like it would just be, exponentially.
Through you, Chair, yeah. So the way that Highway Traffic Act deals with speeding fines is there are thresholds, and the speed fines increase over, depending on how much you're going over the speed limit. So that is built in regardless of the double fines or not. So there's all of those thresholds would be doubled under the Community Safety Zone and Administrative Penalties program.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foxton. Oh, Doug, did you want to
Through you,
go
Chair.
ahead? Go ahead.
Thank you, Councillor Foxton. I think, Councillor Williams, there's a critical point of clarification here that there are, in the region, areas where fines are doubled, being construction zones as one good example. So this isn't inconsistent with how we apply the HDA today. It's just the community safety zone feature is the new element.
Okay, that's what I was trying to clarify, because I know that there are places, but that's more for like if the police pull you over, you would get fined there double. Thank you.
Councillor Foxton.
Thank you, and through you, Chair. I want to piggyback on my municipal colleague, and again, Doug, about our conversation yesterday in emails, because we know that certain areas in the townships are feeder roads, and we have problems that, for example, Clyde, and the people that they have no sidewalk or curb to walk along, and they were an elderly couple out walking, and they had to sort of jump into the ditch because the speeders are trying to get to Hamilton and everything else. Police can't be on all these roads, and we know that. And I agree with Councillor Deutschman that we do need to look at Roseville and we do need to look at Clyde. Putting these cameras strategically achieves more than putting these cameras everywhere or in a certain narrow criteria. And an example is, and as you said before, the regional roads, Roseville Road is a regional road. So is Clyde Road that runs through my municipalities. So we have to be strategic and look at the death in Roseville Road just a few days ago. And maybe a speed camera would have really helped there. Maybe it didn't slow people down enough that it wouldn't have happened. And I'm not saying that's true, but it does make you think. So if we can sort of watch that our narrow criteria prevents us from accomplishing things that we possibly could accomplish. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Foxton. Councillor McCabe?
Thank you. I guess Councillor Williams just mentioned it, but I just wanted to remind us that the report is about community safety zones, and I feel that the conversation has become about speed cameras and fines, and that was a discussion that we had many months ago, maybe about a year ago. And so today around this council table, that's not what's up for discussion and decision making today. So I'm hoping we can move off of that and just focus on the question at hand, which is about community safety zones. And just want to remind you that, other municipalities have this in place already. Like I can think of Peel region off the top of my head, in Brampton and Mississauga, which are, area municipalities in Peel region. They've implemented this. I think many municipalities have implemented this already. And I just also wanted to say that, really what we should be focused on, in my opinion, is that we're talking about the safety of some of the very youngest in our community. We're talking about kids trying to get to parks and daycares and schools and playgrounds and, and places like that, right? And we're asking drivers, and we've asked drivers for years, and we've needed to up the ante to say you have to go slower in these areas because the risk that we're putting our residents the risk to our residents is too great. So I know there's no question there's a comment, but I'm prepared to move the motion.
Okay. I have two more speakers. Councillor McCabe, you've moved it. Councillor Verbanovic, and then Councillor Deutschman.
So I just want to gain some clarity because, and Councillor McCabe is correct that on this committee, we're talking community safety zones, but at the next committee, we're talking about AMPS, the naming of the program and so on. And these two are very much intertwined together. So it actually would have been helpful, in my opinion, if we actually put it all under one report, either finance or this committee, and dealt with it together so that we're looking at it comprehensively. And I think that's why we're seeing people mix the discussion. So I thank you, Chair, for allowing the latitude of members of council to deal with this. So I just want to be very clear in terms of what's being proposed here. So as I understand it, what's being suggested is that all 175 approximate areas where a camera will be in place in a school zone, we will also designate it a community safety zone because under AMPS, it's all doubled automatically anyway, unless we decide that we're not going with AMPS, correct?
Through you, Chair, of the 175, it's only the ones on the regional roadway, so approximately 40. Those 40 locations are the ones that we are recommending a community safety zone. And we'll have further discussions with the area municipalities about potentially adopting a similar approach on on their roadways. But that ultimately is a designation in their respective bylaws.
But on the area municipalities, whether they call it a community safety zone or not, you're saying that fine is going to be doubled anyway, so it'll be the same thing.
Through you, Chair, that's correct. The fines will be doubled.
Unless we abandon AMPS.
That's correct.
Okay. So then, if I also understood your response to Councillor Wolf, out of the 175 you previously said, I think about 40 were on regional roads, the other 135 are on area municipal roads. Using the warrant measure for schools, in fact, we may not put cameras, I just want to make sure I'm understanding you correctly, in front of all those 40 schools. We may only do some schools.
Through you, Chair, that's correct. So essentially what we're implying is that if there isn't a speeding issue there, then we don't add a municipal speed camera because it's not actually going to accomplish anything. So the community safety zone warrant will help us figure out which of the schools warrant a municipal speed camera and a community safety zone designation.
And do we have a rough idea out of that 40 of 175, how many may not be warranted in the end? I mean, staff must have some gut feel perhaps around it?
Through you, Chair, I don't know the number. I would anticipate that a high majority on regional roads, because the nature of regional roads typically are designed for higher speeds, but I don't know the number. One of our recommendations is to identify which locations will and bring that forward to you in a subsequent report.
Okay. I think I have all the information on this, but Madam Chair, I will actually suggest that I think in light of what we're learning about this, what we're learning about AMPS, what we're learning that, for example, some warrants that right now are warranted may not in fact be warranted in the future. And I agree with Councillor Deutschmann that there are streets where we know there are problems, particularly in the settlements and so on, where we want to be able to maintain these. I think this actually needs to go back to a working group of the region and area municipalities, to both this and actually the report at finance later on, to work through some of this stuff. Because I will just say, this news of doubling because of AMPS, I wasn't aware of that. And if that was the case, that's my fault, and I will take responsibility for that. But I can tell you that my council is already having some concerns around the way the existing rotational system is rolling out and so on. And I can tell you that with a doubling, I think there's going to be some serious questions, and I don't want to speak for all of my municipal colleagues in Kitchener, but on conversations I've had, I can tell you there's going to be a serious questioning about our participation in the program. Or very limited participation, which is going to change the whole business plan around this. So I really think there's some work that needs to be done here between everyone. So I'm going to actually move that this be referred back to a working group of area and regional colleagues.
Okay, so currently we have the original recommendation from staff, in order to put the referral, we need to have council to vote for that.
That takes priority.
Proper procedure here. So, yeah, just some clarification, Councilor Banovic. So this would be coming back to a future committee meeting? Is that where we
Yes,
refer?
I mean, it would be, because clearly there's work that needs to be done here that needs to engage our municipal staff and, quite frankly, our municipal councils, so that there's a coordinated approach happening here. Because I think there's new information coming to light, and I'm hearing it around this horseshoe as well, that's serving as a concern for members of this council. And I know will serve as a point of concern for some of our area councils as well.
Okay, Doug, do you want to weigh in and just confirm if there's been, especially conversations with area municipal staff around this? Just give some details here.
Yeah, it's actually, so there has been, and our suggestion is that we do that ongoing. It's actually a point of clarity on, are we asking to refer the application of this program to area municipal roads to a working group, or is it the application of this program to regional roads? Because there's nothing in here that suggests any application outside of regional roads at this point. It's actually to go and do that work.
Me?
I think so.
That's a question for you.
Okay, well, so I'm actually referring the whole set of recommendations that are in front of us, because you can't delink the two from each other. There's connection between all of them. And I think, we need to have ideally some consistency here. Yes, there has been some dialogue. I do know that in talking to my staff who have talked to some of the other municipal staff, there isn't necessarily alignment with the region on some aspects of what's in front of us today, and there is some concern there. And in light of what's in the report, the information given to us today, and all of that, I think there's additional work that needs to be done. I just want to remind council that next year will be, in fact, 30 years since the electorate of this province delivered a very clear message. And one of the clear messages they delivered provincially was because of the use of speed cameras at that time that they felt were unjust. So I think there's a high tolerance. There is a high tolerance in the community for addressing some of the traffic issues in our community, but only if people are feeling that it's being done justly. And I think right now we're running the risk, and I'm hearing it from community, my councillors are hearing it from community, others around this horseshoe are hearing it from community, that the public isn't necessarily feeling that. And with 4 cameras now, only going to 176, I can tell you that we're going to be hearing it a whole lot more if we don't address some of these issues now, particularly if fines are doubled. Thank you, Madam Chair.
Point of order. I was wondering if my friend could defer any deferral motions so I had an opportunity to be reached on the list. It's a problem. One of the issues of following Councilor Banovic.
I will defer my deferral motion if the chair allows.
Okay. So in terms of, Sue, you've seconded Councilor Urbanovic's referral to a working group comprised of regional, area, municipal staff and councillors to be brought back at a later date. Part of this motion that's coming forward as well, the recommendation from staff, does encompass this. So to create another working group, like another steering committee for the steering committee, and I'm conscious of time as well, just putting that out there, that we're continue to delay things when we've already had discussion about this. Going back about 1.5 years ago, we had reports coincided and consolidated, and then we separated them, what you're seeing today. There has been significant discussion. So we will vote on this. I am conscious in terms of capacity, Doug, and your team, for this working group and all of that in terms of time. There's a lot of unknown nuance with this. Okay, and Councillor Deutschman, you're going to speak to, are you speaking to this?
I have a few questions that I wanted to ask, so can't speak to the deferral, like you can't speak
No.
to a deferral motion. So that's why I was asking for it to be halted for a moment so
Okay.
that I could be reached on the list.
Okay, go ahead, Councillor Deutschman.
Thank you. I just wanted to clarify because this issue about creating and the question relates to this, community safety zones in school zones seems to be a doubling. And just to clarify, council could, legal counsel could advise, under the legislation, we could put speed cameras in school zones or community safety zones. Is that correct?
Through you, Madam Chair, that is my understanding, yes, Councillor.
Right, and so there's no need to designate a school safety zone or a school zone as a community safety zone to put a camera in.
Through you, Madam Chair, if the purpose is just to identify a zone to place a camera, yes, that would be correct. They're often one and the same, though.
So then we won't have to double up fines in these. The whole purpose of this exercise from council was to come up with areas outside of school zones that could be community safety zones. Now, just to clarify, the current rollout of the school safety zone camera program, and this is in relation to this, is going to take 4 years. So we're not going to get to establishing a community, I heard a yep, so we're not going to get to establishing a community safety zone for 4 years out. So we have time to get this right. Thank you.
Okay, so with that, we'll call the question for the referral. Okay, Councillor Verbanovic.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. Just so that there is some clarity, I think the issue is that by virtue of it being, whether it's a school zone or a community safety zone, by virtue of the AMPS decision, the doubling is going to happen anyway. Yeah, but it all impacts, and I guess my point is the reason we need to actually take the time, I think we want to make sure this is implemented appropriately so that there is, there's obviously nobody likes getting a ticket, and I'm fine with people getting tickets for reasonable, enforcement of things going forward. It's why I supported it, but I can tell you that where we're at right now is going in a direction that certainly for me is causing discomfort, and I think for others, and it's better that we actually take the time and do it, because otherwise we run the risk of the whole program potentially falling apart depending on what the views of this council are.
Councillor Hunick, do you want to speak to this? Defer?
Yeah. Thank you, Chair. Would the removal of Clause 3 solve some of the discrepancy here? And I'm looking at staff for clarification. Is it possible to keep the staff recommendation and remove Clause 3 so that fines are not doubled, but still there and still reasonable?
Through you, Chair, it is possible to remove Clause 3, but as long as we're proceeding with the adoption of the AMPS program, the Administrative Penalties Program, then the fines are going to be doubling either way. So the reason Part 3 is in there is because that provides an avenue to communicate with the public that there are doubled fines in this school zone that has a municipal speed camera.
Okay, so we are going to vote on the deferral. Could you please use eScribe? Referral. Okay, so that is carried. Just in terms of timeline for this, Doug, will you and your team be able to report back on this?
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thank you for the question. So, yes, I don't have a timeline. The program rollout is 36 cameras per year starting November. So the goal was to bring back shortly the school zones on regional roads. And and then to bring back the comprehensive list in 6 to 9 months following working with the area municipality. So I'm happy to establish the working group and bring it back. I'm actually not sure how this is a fundamental change in our approach. We are still coming back with the same reports.
Okay, thank you. Okay, so we are now moving on to 6.2, the Downtown Waste Services Review. I will call upon Jennifer Rose to introduce the report.
Thank you, Chair James. This report is in response to Council's direction to separate downtown waste collection from the regular residential waste collection contract, which was recently awarded. Downtown waste collection is different from residential and has unique needs, which lend to beautification and economic development in downtown areas. The transition of the Blue Box program to producers has offered an opportunity to revisit the waste streams collected, the opportunity to use carts, and the number of days for waste pickup. Through this study, there was extensive consultation and collaboration with BIAs, area municipal staff, area municipal elected officials, and the businesses themselves. It was determined through this consultation to move to a cart-based collection system with 3-stream pickup, introducing organics, and a minimum of 2 days per week collection to start March 2026 when the current contract expires. The reason we chose a minimum 2 days a week is based on the volume of waste at the curb, which we collected through the study. However, through internal conversations among staff and others, there may be more than 2 days a week needed for organics pickup, for instance, with the restaurants, and a different number of days for garbage and recycling. The carts will provide a clean waste receptacle for the business's waste, help with pest control, and provide storage to eliminate the need for 6-day-a-week pickup. 2 areas of concern emerged from our consultations: the storage of the carts and the number of pickup days, which are being proposed to be reduced from 6 to 2. Staff will work with business improvement areas and area municipal staff in the coming weeks and months to determine the levels of service, which are the number of days per week, by stream, I mean organics, recycling, and garbage, and the unique challenges which will arise. We know the cart-based collection can be accommodated by most businesses and understand that there will be unique needs, and we are committed to work to ensure success of this approach with all. In speaking with the local business improvement areas, they are all eager to help us implement this program in a way that makes sense for that downtown area. We intend to come back with a report to Regional Council with recommendations on the levels of service in the spring. So this report, the one recommendation for minimum 2 days, is just to give us a starting point so that we can have those conversations with the BIAs and area municipal staff and others who we've already engaged with to figure out what the actual number of days should be based on waste stream. We have one amendment in the report that staff noticed after it was published in recommendation C, to remove the words garbage and organics, as we will continue to pick those up in businesses outside of the downtown area. So I just wanted to mention that. So we are recommending the removal of recycling pickup services, as this would need to be fully funded by the region. Also, in the communications section, we did receive a letter from the City of Cambridge, as well as Kitchener and Waterloo. So Director Arsenault and I are available to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you, Jennifer. Councillor Hunick.
Thank you, Chair. Is the region legislatively mandated to collect garbage from downtown core?
Through the Chair to Councillor, no. The Municipal Act only requires us to pick up garbage from residential areas.
Can I ask a follow-up too?
Yes.
Are there other regions that provide similar quality of service to what Waterloo region has done previously and might change moving forward?
Through the chair to the councillor. So I think the region of Durham, I'd have to look at Director Arsenault, has recently voted to not collect downtown waste, but all the other regions do. They do not provide the same levels of service that we do. We actually provide more service than any other municipality with a 6-day-a-week pickup. Most municipalities are at 2 days a week, but perhaps Director Arsenault can add some more details.
Yeah, through the chair, most municipalities or all municipalities across the province still continue to collect downtown waste. In the case of Durham, what they're suggesting is no longer collecting the blue box component because it is now considered a non-eligible waste under the new blue box regulation. But every downtown municipality that we're aware of across the province continues to collect waste from those downtowns.
Thank you. Councillor McCabe.
Thank you very much. Through you, Chair. I just wanted to move this or amend the motion that the staff recommended motion, and clerks have the amendments that I was proposing. I'm just wondering if you could pull that up on screen.
Okay, so we don't have the mover and seconder for this, so I think we've got to wait for that to be on the floor for then you to
Just
amend
trying to
it.
make up some time here.
Okay. All right, so we're going to come back to this, okay?
Someone
All right.
move the motion, please. Can I move it with the amendments that I've shared? No?
No. Councillor Shantz.
Point of order. Right. That's what she's saying.
Is that okay? Okay. So you're bringing the amendment forward now. So does clerks have that to show everyone?
I was trying to amend the motion, the staff recommended motion. So if you need someone to move that.
No. Okay. 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, so Councillor McCabe, you're presenting a new motion. That's what it is. It's not an amendment. It's a new motion to what's been there. Okay, so you're presenting the new motion. It is on your screens. I can read that. Okay. Okay,
Chair
so
James, I've got it.
you've got it? Okay, all right, perfect.
And I'll second it if need be.
Okay, so Councillor McCabe's moved, Councillor Hunick has seconded, so now this will be prompted in your e-scribe. No, oh, and there's a discussion. Oh my goodness. Okay, Councillor Shantz.
Thank you. My question is related to either the original or the amendment. It doesn't matter. Why is there a difference in pickup between the townships and the cities? Do we create less garbage?
Yes, through the chair, that is the case.
I mean, is that?
We did a study, and we went and surveyed downtown businesses, and the 1 day a week is what you have now, and it's working well for the townships. So we were continuing with 1 day a week for the townships.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, Councillor Salonen.
Thank you. Kind of piggybacking off of that. So if the townships produce less waste and get less service, is it area rated? I'm not asking facetiously, although some of my colleagues giggling might make them think that.
I was trying to subtly see if Commissioner Braun would like to answer that question.
No, it is not area rated.
I mean, what would it look like area rated? Because it is still a significant service difference. Is that something that's possible? I'm looking as to who that would go to.
Without actually doing the calculation, I would anticipate that it is far more expensive in the rurals, given the geography that needs to be covered, versus the urban. But it is just one, it's on the general levy as it is right now.
Okay, Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Chair, I was wondering if accessibility had been a concern. I heard from some constituents that they were concerned about the large bins on the sidewalk, and they're in wheelchairs, and they didn't feel that they could navigate on some of our downtown city streets.
Through the chair, that will be taken into account and is being taken into account. We understand the implications of that regardless of who's maneuvering down the streets. That's the intent of the working groups with the BIAs and with the city staff and township staff to look at where's the best place to set out the carts, anticipating the contractor also maneuvering some of the carts around so that we can have clear spaces and clear walkways.
And one follow-up, can you have, or will you have different pickups? For instance, in the Galt downtown core, Main Street might be different than Ainsley Street. Could you have different kind of pickup for one street than you do for another? Or do they all have to be the same, whatever you've chosen, 4 days a week, large bin or...
Again, through the chair, that's a discussion we will have with the BIAs and the city staff. But I think we want to, and we do acknowledge the uniqueness of the different downtowns and different BIAs, and we'll try and adapt the program accordingly. But it may be difficult if it's one street over from another and certain things. So, in all likelihood, it'd be easier to continue with the same program. So in the downtown Galt, for instance, it would be the same number of days as downtown Preston and downtown Hespeler. But we do, through our discussions with, as part of the working group with the BIAs and the city staff, there might be some ability to adapt that.
Okay, because they are quite different physically. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Verbanovic.
Thank you very much, and thanks for the work that staff did on this, and also for organizing the tours that I know a number of area and regional elected officials, as well as staff and BIA staff, participated in. And we, as folks will recall from the emails, we went down to Halton and Burlington in particular, and it was actually very informative. And I want to thank Councillor McCabe for the modified motion that's been presented in front of us today, because I think it reflects some of the things that particularly the three urban areas were concerned about, and the things that we learned about during that tour. And I think, most importantly, and this speaks to the issue around accessibility and other similar kinds of issues that was just addressed. One of the things we learned in Halton, I mean, first of all, it's important to remember in Halton, they went from 2 days a week bags to 2 days a week bins. So that was an easier transition than I think we're going to experience here as we look at some adjustment to dates, which is one of the pieces of work that will follow yet based on the motion that's in front of us. But the other thing that we learned on that tour was that it can't be a one-size-fits-all approach in terms of how we handle this. Uptown Waterloo is different than downtown Galt, which is different than downtown Kitchener, both in terms of the way the planning has happened in those areas, spaces for bins, density in terms of height and how that impacts, and how we're going to deal with bins when you've got 3 floors of people potentially needing to leave garbage in the system, how you deal with stuff that's outside of the bin, which incidentally in Halton they pick up. So I think this motion actually will allow that work to happen, because this is as much a change management exercise as it's an exercise in terms of how we're actually going to pick up things. And I will say, going down, I was leery, and I still recognize there's going to be some challenges around the community, but I was leery about if bins could actually work in the downtown. I left Halton believing that actually they can work, that they will help us with some of the challenges that we have in terms of cleanliness. But we just need to take the time to do it right, and in many ways have a bespoke solution for every property that's going to meet those needs, so that we aren't blocking wheelchairs and strollers, that we're accommodating excess amounts of garbage and all that kind of thing. And staff at regional staff certainly have indicated their willingness to work with us and on this. And I just want to say that I think as we go into that next step, working very closely with the area municipalities and the downtown BIA staff who know their businesses the best is going to make your life the easiest in terms of that implementation. And certainly we're willing, and my understanding is many of the others are willing to work with you on that. So thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Craig.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Just very quickly, I remember seeing a letter copied to me about the downtown BIA in Cambridge having concerns with regards to the bins and preferring, if I understand it correctly, they wanted to keep the bags. So where are we now with all of this, so I understand? Because we have a motion, then we have a motion that's that is being brought forth, that is not an amendment. So I'm trying to understand where we're going with all of this.
So through the chair to the councillor, yes, you are correct. We received a letter or an email from Downtown Galt Business Association where they did want to continue with the bags. The city of Cambridge did also provide us a letter which supported the cart option. So we just have two differing points of view, and the majority of people that we spoke to did like the carts option and did want to go with it because it's cleaner. There will be storage issues, as Councillor Urbanovic said. Each business is different. There are accessibility issues. We need to work very closely with the businesses to make sure that this is implemented correctly. We don't want this to not work, obviously. So we need to be with the people who are most closely aligned with their garbage needs, and that is the businesses and the business associations. So that's why we're proposing. We propose 2 days a week because that's the data that we received on the amount of garbage. So if you want a little of waste management theory, we look at tonnages and then we determine routes and we determine the number of days of pickup. That's how we do it. So that's why in speaking with businesses, especially restaurants, they're like, we create a lot of organics and we don't know if we can store many organics carts. So then the director and I were talking, like maybe organics pickup is 4 days a week, but garbage and recycling is only 1 day a week. So with this report, we're asking council to essentially approve the idea of carts, that policy piece, and allow staff the time to figure out an implementation plan on what works best for each of the downtown areas with the BIAs and with the area municipal staff as well as councillors.
Okay, I appreciate that. Madam Chair, I'm just wondering, so we have a motion, and then Councillor McCabe's got a motion that's not an amendment. Is it not a notice of motion?
I don't believe it's a notice of motion because it's relevant to what's being discussed today. So that's how that worked out. I'm
not objecting to what you're trying to do.
Yeah, we don't need a notice of motion because it's already on the agenda.
So anytime in a committee meeting, if we want to bring up an alternate motion, we don't have to give notice?
Yep, my understanding, you don't have to.
All right,
If it's something
okay, thank
completely
you.
separate. Okay. Okay, Councillor Liggett.
Remember that one.
Thank you, Madam Chair. My concern has to do with something that was brought up in the letter from our city executive, and it has to do with page 1 of the report, or page 55 of the agenda, A6, where it talks about the enforcement of the bylaw. So let me just go to it. That the delegate of the enforcement authority would go to the local area municipalities. And we've already stated that while we strive to collaborate as possible, we regrettably do not have the staffing available to respond to enforcement requests for this bylaw. So is that something that's going to be looked at, or are we voting to accept that tonight? Because if we're voting to accept that tonight, then I'm going to ask for an amendment for that to be struck from the motion.
So through the chair, to the councillor, what we're doing with this bylaw amendment is just allow, if there's capacity and if the area municipalities want to enforce the waste bylaw, because some have asked us for that, that they can do so. We're not expecting the area municipal bylaw staff to enforce the waste bylaw. We have our own regional bylaw officers, but we're also getting our inspectors bylaw authority, so we're increasing our bylaw capacity at the region. It's just that a few municipalities have asked for that, so it doesn't mean that Cambridge has to do it, though, if that's helpful.
That's very helpful. I'm just concerned with the wording on that, because it doesn't say that we have a choice in there. So I'm afraid we're going to get stuck doing something we're not capable of doing.
Thank you. Chair Redmond.
Thank you very much, Chair James. I'm sure there are people watching this on YouTube and just being riveted. So I'm just wondering, Commissioner Rose, if you can just talk about, I mean, this is really being driven by the province, and as far as the buckets and waste producers being responsible. So this isn't a great idea, as smart as John and Jennifer are, that they woke up one morning and went, ooh, let's do this. I'm also looking for clarification, because what I read, which I found very comforting, we know the BIAs have stepped up, and there's been a lot of active consultation with them. And as we move forward, the original motion did talk about assessing this as we go forward. And I guess I'm just looking for assurance that, as much as Councillor McCabe brought forward a couple of amendments, it basically was the frequency of the downtown pickup, that all other parts of this motion will still be there, because I think as we go through this, it's really important to assess what's working and what's not.
Yes, absolutely, and perhaps Director Arsenault, being closer to what's going on with the province than I am, could answer the blue box and the motivation behind this. But just speaking to the number of days, we picked minimum 2 days because that's what the tonnages showed us. But we actually internally don't expect that it will be 2 days. We just wanted to because 2 days was, or sorry, the number of days was such an important point of conversation through discussing with the BIAs and the area municipalities, that we wanted to assure people that we're not going to go less than 2 days, but it's likely going to be more than 2 days, just based off of the type of material that's going to be put out at the curb, especially the organics, because we're separating it out. But perhaps Director Arsenault can talk about Blue Box and the transition, especially with businesses.
Yeah, thank you.
Before you go forward with that, I don't think well, as much as I appreciate Chair Redmond's comments, I don't think my concerns were addressed as far as the wording of the motion itself. So, am I just being overly concerned, Ms. Rose, or is there something that could be changed in this to show that to delegation of authority would go to willing municipalities?
If they choose. Can we amend it to say if they choose?
Certainly, I'll make that forward, that amendment.
Okay. Okay, Councillor Salonen.
Sorry, was
Sorry.
that being taken as a friendly amendment? I can second it if it needs to be, but.
It's a friendly one. Okay. I'm sorry, John, you wanted to speak. Didn't want to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah, okay. Sorry. So I think one of the things by adding in organics, we're also dealing with getting stuff out of the landfill. And I think when we look at the blue box regulation, even though we're not required to pick up there, if we're going to be picking up waste from the downtown cores and it was simply just garbage or whatever, it would all end up in our own landfill. So I think that's where we see the difference of we might as well ensure that we divert the materials that we can that don't go in the landfill, organics and blue box recycling, even though there's a cost associated with it, even if it increases the scope of work, because there's an overall benefit in the long run.
Thank you. Councillor Salonen.
Thank you. So I did also just want to touch on if we're discontinuing the public space and litter collection, does that impact any of the townships? Because I thought New Hamburg, it did collect in those areas.
Through you, Chair. The reason that's there is it's been a legacy issue in many of these contracts, the previous downtown contracts, and we've noticed quite a significant inequity in terms of where sandy cans or the public space receptacles are collected. There are some townships where they are collected, and there's others where we don't. Same with the cities. It's a differential, and because it's public space waste and not curbside generated typically by those buildings, that's why we're suggesting taking it out. But you're right. New Hamburg is one where there is some collection done by our contract staff.
That's fine. Just with that answer, I was just wondering if we can amend, or I would put forward an amendment then as to section A5 that directs staff to discuss the necessary details with representatives from the cities of Waterloo, Cambridge, and Kitchener, and the region of the Waterloo is what it currently says to talk about this discontinuation. If we can just say all impacted area municipalities instead. Because right now, as it stands, and I recognize that staff would probably continue to speak and work with our township. However, if we're putting an actual motion, I would like it to be clear that it's addressing all of the impacted spaces versus just the 3 cities.
Councillor Salonen, which section is this you're referring to?
A5, section A, part 5.
So this is
right now, it just identifies the 3 cities.
Okay. Okay,
yes.
So to be more inclusive of just kind of all impacted in
yes,
terms of language?
Yes, for language, if it can just say all impact. Exactly. Thank you,
okay.
Julie.
Another friendly amendment.
Okay, I do have additional questions though. So with that, is there going to be created tax room that's moving down to the area municipalities for this change in service? Again, this is coming from, I know it might be a rounding error at the region, but at the township of Wilmot, we do not have money to collect those garbage cans without making tax room somewhere.
Yes, so, through the chair to Councillor Salonen, and that would be a council decision through budget.
So is that going to be coming forward in budget, or how do I get it brought to budget? This service level change, if we're talking about it now, and we're voting on a service level change now that presumably if it passes is going to pass tonight, how do I ensure that the budget component is following?
Well, this would be implemented in March of 2026, so I think there's time, but I'm going to defer to Commissioner Braun to answer that.
Through you, Chair. Yeah, I believe there will be opportunity for staff to bring back the impacts of this once they decide the quantum and where and when and how much. And we can definitely bring that back ahead of the 2026 budget process.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Shantz.
Thank you, and apologies, I didn't get to the Halton demonstration, so maybe that would have answered this question. I was speaking with a business in St. Jacobs recently, And both St. Jacobs and Elmira have on-street parking, and so timing of pickup was really important. With the automatic pickup, how does that work when there's on-street parking?
Through you, Chair. I think that's part of the details that would be discussed with the BIAs and the working group and the area municipal staff, recognizing going in early, or if there is an obstruction, that's the operators to move carts around so that the trucks can get at it. So that was understood. That is certainly something we saw in Halton, where they did manipulate the bins to move it away from parked cars. But we would try and adapt to when it's least impactful as possible.
Thank you. Okay, so we have a motion by Councillor McCabe. Jennifer, I know you wanted to ask a question regarding that. Please go ahead.
Thank you, Chair James. Just wondering, Councillor McCabe, you're using the general word garbage, but in our nerdy waste management world, we have recycling, organics, and waste. So are you suggesting the 4 days would be for organics, recycling, and waste? Or just for everything? Okay, thank you.
Okay, so we've got, actually, okay, perfect. Okay, so now I'm going to, we've got a mover, Councillor McCabe, who seconded, Councillor Hunick, who's not here right now. Okay, so we will be prompted on e-scribe to vote. Okay, that is carried. Okay, so that's it for this committee. There are item 7.1. Was there? Oh, no, there's one more. Getting ahead of myself here. Almost through it. 6.2.2, Cambridge to Union Passenger Rail Connection, initial business case and concept design. Doug Spooner, going to call on you to introduce this.
Yeah, thank you, and through you, Chair. Council, I'm again joined by a member of my team. Oriana Agoyas is our transportation planner engineer on our transportation planning team. She's going to take us through this presentation. Before Oriana does, I want to thank Oriana and her team for the work on this project. The team of this one is made up of regional staff, City of Cambridge staff, along with staff from the City of Guelph, Wellington County, and Guelph-Aramosa. This is not our usual group of partners. I also want to quickly add my support for this project. We've established that the Cambridge to Guelph corridor is the largest unserviced commuter corridor outside of the GTHA, and the initial business case shows all options with a benefit cost ratio above 1, meaning that the benefits of this project outweigh the cost. In short, it's a winning project. Oriana, over to you to tell us more about it, and then an opportunity for questions.
Thank you. Hello, I'm presenting today about Cambridge to Union Passenger Go Rail. Next slide. This is the presentation outline, so I'll be talking about all of these points. Next slide. For project history, the efforts to connect Cambridge to the GO Rail system really started in 2009. An early option was looking to connecting the Cambridge through Milton through a CP-owned railway. And then in 2021, we started a feasibility study which looked at also a second option, which was connecting through Guelph to the Kitchener-Go line and then to Union. The conclusion of that study in 2021 was that the connection through Guelph had more benefits. For example, it had competitive travel times, and it was easier to implement, and it was more cost effective. So we continue to an initial business case study with that option, and that's what this work for 2023 and 2024 is today. Next slide. So this project strongly aligns with the strategic plan of the region of Waterloo. For example, it provides an alternative transportation mode that is less carbon intensive compared to the current one, which is mainly driving alone. And so this supports our climate aligned growth pillar. And then it also, if you invest in transit, this typically results in higher density development and also mixed use development, which supports the region's housing goals. So it aligns with the Homes for All pillar as well. Next slide. So as Doug said earlier, Cambridge is one of the largest unserved commuter communities outside of the GTHA by the GO Rail. So on the slide, you can see the current existing GO Rail system, and the dashed black line is the proposed alignment of the service. So it goes from Cambridge to Guelph and then through the Kitchener GO line towards Union. On the slide, you can also see tables that have locations that currently have stations or have planned stations that have populations that are currently similar or smaller than Cambridge's population. And even their forecasted populations sometimes are similar or even smaller than Cambridge are. So we can clearly see that there's a missing link here in Cambridge. Next slide. For the overview of the proposed service in Cambridge, there is a new station proposed at near the intersection of Eagle, Pine Bush, and Hespeler. And this is to leverage ongoing efforts by the city of Cambridge to densify this corridor, the Hespeler corridor. And there's also a key opportunity here for a transit-oriented community. And a transit-oriented community would also further the region's housing goals because it would specifically plan for higher density and mixed-use development around the station. Between Cambridge and Guelph, the service would be hourly or better all day, and it would take about 15 minutes to Guelph. At Guelph, people would transfer to the Kitchener GO line using an integrated platform, and this is at the existing Central Guelph station. Next slide. On this slide, you can see the proposed alignment, which is again the dashed black line, and you can see how it integrates with stage 2IN, the planned alignment. And also, if you look at the slide, you can see how it connects. It finishes that triangle of transit between the region and Guelph. And one of the things that we found in this study and through the previous 2021 feasibility study is that Guelph and Cambridge has currently an existing significant market already, which this proposed service would service directly. Next slide. This is a close-up of the alignment through the city of Cambridge, so you can see where it crosses in Hespeler Village and then towards Guelph. Next slide. For the initial business case, the project team considered 4 options in addition to the business as usual, which would be no rail service. Options 1A and 1B have a single track. Options 2A and 2B have a single track with a siding. A siding allows for train passing, so then you can have higher frequency of trains. The difference between the A's and B's is more track updates for the B's, so faster train speeds. So the results of the initial business case are that the project strongly aligns with the existing policy and plans for the cities of Cambridge, Guelph, the region, and the province of Ontario. All of the options have greater economic benefits to society than economic costs when you compare it to the business as usual option. Beyond the initial capital investment, the service would require a subsidy to operate, but this is reasonable and it happens often for transit projects, so it is a reasonable outcome. And ultimately, the project is deliverable. Next slide. The project team used different tools for public engagement, which included in-person meetings, virtual meeting, and online polling. This efforts resulted in over 600 touch points, so we had really good engagement from the public. The overall results was very supportive for the project, and people were asking us to help deliver this project as fast as possible. We also found through the online polling that most people would prefer to get to the station in Cambridge using anything other than driving alone or using their personal cars, with a majority indicating that they would like to use local transit. The public also indicated that currently there is a service needed for a bus in the meantime before we implement a rail service, because again, the public echoed the sentiment that there's already a significant existing market between Cambridge and Guelph that then needs this GO bus service because they don't have a lot of options for transit. Some of the concerns that the public most often quoted included congestion on Hespeler, parking at the station in Cambridge, noise, safety, and the transfer at Guelph. A lot of these can be addressed through proper design and also timetabling, as well as planning for better local transit and active transportation connections to the station in Cambridge. The public also suggested other locations for the station. The station analysis was actually performed in 2021 through the feasibility study, and it was approved by council. At the time, it was concluded that this is the best way to move the project forward with that location in Pine Bush. And however, future work may look at other stations along the line as we provide an incremental service. Next slide. So in summary, Cambridge is one of the largest commuter communities outside of the GTA that is in service by GO Rail. This project and the proposed service is strongly aligned with regional plans and policies. There's also an existing significant market between Guelph and Cambridge already, and there's great potential for ridership in the future, according to our forecasts. Benefits to the communities, economic benefits to the communities and to the society is larger than the economic costs, and the project also has pretty reasonable capital investment needs. And overall, through all the engagement that we did, there was overwhelming public support. And again, we had over 600 touch points for engagement, so we got a lot of engagement. Next slide. So the recommendations on the report would then turn into next steps if approved by council. And along with this, staff is working on a transit-oriented study, a transit-oriented community study to explore the possibilities around the station in Cambridge. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you so much. We do have a few questions. Councillor Wolf.
Through you, Madam Chair, I would also actually volunteer to move the motion. And I thank staff very much for coming up with this plan. So long waited for since I became a city councillor under Doug Craig as mayor. We've been pleading, asking for this kind of via rail connection between Cambridge and Toronto, and so it's great to see this first step. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hunick.
Chair James, this is not only needed for Cambridge, this is needed for people like myself who rely exclusively on transit and travel to Guelph and other areas frequently. I found myself waiting at all hours of the day or night in the Aberfoyle park and ride, hoping that my GO buses will come, and that's not safe and that's not good. And so this will be an asset to the region and an asset to Cambridge and an asset to the environment as we encourage public transit.
Excellent. Thank you, Councillor. Councillor Liggett.
Thank you, Chair. I have a question. The stats on the Engage platform, when it said the majority did not want to use a car to get to the station. I have a question. Were the demographics done on that as to whether they were Cambridge residents who were actually going to need that? Because I noted that in the public meeting, a lot of the people there were part of Waterloo Region Cycle. And the one who was supposed to be representing Cambridge didn't even live in Cambridge. So I'm wondering if that platform actually drilled down on the demographics when you say who they were.
Through Chair, is it on? Yeah. Yes, the platform on Engage is able to tell us how many of Cambridge residents answered that. I don't believe the report currently has that separated, so it's generally, but the majority of respondents were from Cambridge, residents of Cambridge. That was one of the questions in the survey. we can certainly look at it and see if that makes a difference when we separate it by.
Okay, I'd just like to have that information. I fully support the motion and great job, and I'm very appreciative of the presentation. So, thank you.
Thank you. So you can disaggregate that a little bit to share with Councillor Liggett. Perfect. Councillor Craig.
Well, thank you, Madam Chair. I do appreciate the expansiveness of the whole report. I think it was over 300 pages. Certainly a lot of work has gone into it. I'm not critical of the aspects of the comprehensiveness of the report. A couple of things come to mind, and one is that it is indicated that Cambridge residents, if they do get a GO train, will have to transfer at Guelph, which I don't find acceptable. I think there should be a train from Cambridge to Union Station. So I want to leave that with staff as you pursue this. The second thing is the issue around timing. I want to go back to the residents of Cambridge at some point and say there's a pathway to a ribbon cutting day. I want to know when that's going to be. So we don't have anything in the in our plans right now, our capital plans for a station in Cambridge. I'd like to know when that is being considered. I also would like to get back further information from Metrolinx where we fit in the provincial plan in terms of having this done. And I think that's a further report that should come back to council. And I think my friend from Kitchener may get angry with me, but maybe this should be the #1 priority in the region in terms of GO train service to the region of Waterloo, because we have 160,000 people that don't have access. And I think we have to move on it. So what I'm asking, Madam Chair, is that we get a further report with a timeline that makes some sense about when all of this is going to start and when it's going to be completed. Because the dates I see in here are talking 2041 as an optimum about how everything is coming together. And am I to assume then, is that where we're heading in terms of a starting date? I mean, so this has to be sort of put out there in terms of, fleshed out in terms of just when a starting date will be taking place. And I think also incumbent in accompanying all of this is the cost and where who's going to be paying, whether it will be regional government, will it be the province, that kind of thing. So I'm looking forward to a more fulsome report about timing and everything else. And I'll be on you. Don't worry about it. I'm just kidding. Anyways, but again, I come back to staff. This is a great step forward, and I do appreciate all the efforts that have gone into it.
Doug, do you just want to respond? Thank you, Councillor.
Yeah, through you, Chair. Thank you, Councillor Craig. So it's actually a really good question about how we now proceed. So the first question was information on station in Cambridge. So the December report on Stage 2 LRT will speak to stations in which this could be a shared one. Where do we fit in the Metrolinx and long-term plans is actually the next step. So to get this project included in the regional transportation plan is the goal, and then to immediately begin working on a preliminary design business case. So the way that the Metrolinx Act lays out transportation in our province is that interjurisdictional transportation is the responsibility of Metrolinx. So you'll note in the recommendations, we would push first for GO bus service and then a transition to GO rail service. At this point, the initial business case would consider the project in a 0 to 10% design stage. So there is some more work to do to get to a preliminary design and really drill down into the best option. I do not have a better timeline than what is in, and appreciate that we would like to move quickly. I agree with that. And finally, if Metrolinx does adopt this project, I would imagine that we would have further conversations and negotiations about which elements would be best funded by whom. There'll be track elements to this, there'll be rolling stock, and there will also be stations. And just I would agree with you, Councillor Craig. When we do business cases like this and we look at the benefit cost ratio, one of the benefits is time, and it's significant, and so a transfer does increase that time. So our goal would be the same. We want great transit from all across our region, and so we'll keep that in mind as we keep working. Thank you for the opportunity.
Well, Madam Chair, just very quickly then, when can we expect something back from you? 6 months? A year? Just, I'm trying to be very expansive here.
Yeah, so through you, Chair, the December report will speak to the initial business case, yes, for the LRT Stage 2. A report on, if I roughly titled it, how it's going in getting Metrolink support on this one, I imagine we could have by end of year, so.
Okay, good news. Thank you.
And Councillor Craig, you're prepared to second this? Thank you. Okay, Councillor Shantz?
Thank you, Chair. I think this is a great project. I know Cambridge has been looking for it for a long time, especially to service South Cambridge. I just want to ensure that as we're doing this, we're not forgetting the Breslau GO station, which also services North Cambridge. So there are times when one project supersedes another, and so I just want to ensure that that doesn't happen here.
Yeah, through you, Chair, Councillor Shantz, thanks very much. I think, as Councillor Craig rightly noted, we have many areas of interest and of need in the region, and we'll continue to advocate for all. Breslau GO remains an important project.
Thank you. Councillor Urbanovic.
Thank you very much, and I too want to thank staff for a very thorough report that I think lays a strong business case for the connection on the Fergus Spur between Cambridge and Guelph. And you know, I do recall when we started advocating, going back to when we started advocating for GO Transit coming into the region. And at that time, Councillor Craig was already strongly, then Mayor Craig, was strongly advocating about the need for a connection to Cambridge. And in fact, the talk at that time was through the Milton line as opposed to what's being proposed here. And for a variety of reasons, you know, that wasn't sort of deemed overly viable, but this spur came to everyone's attention as a potential. And finally, we see this report in front of us today. I think, you know, all along we have continued to advocate. I know even in conversations that I've had as recently as last week about the need for GO Transit to all areas of our region. And, you know, I'm encouraged to hear that staff plan to bring the more detailed report back later this year so that we can include in our advocacy asks and that the Metrolinx board can figure out how that's going to work into its plans. I actually don't think it's an either or in terms of our advocacy. It's an and that's part of our shared advocacy going forward, so that we can meet the needs of the residents throughout our communities going forward. So look forward to supporting this. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, we are really crunched for time right now. I know there were two other potential questions in the queue. I'm going to kindly ask that you follow up with staff directly because we do need to move things along right now. And I'm going to call the vote. We have a mover, Councillor Wolf, and a seconder, Councillor Craig. I'm going to ask clerks to prompt e-scribe. Okay, thank you, colleagues. That is carried. Item 7.1, community tracking list has been received for information. Is there any other business? Councillor Deutschmann.
Thank you, Chair James. Just directed to Acting Commissioner Spooner, just following up on prior emails regarding the speed limit in front of the new elementary school in Southwest Kitchener. Huron Road posts 60 kilometers in front of that school. And I'm just wondering, is that, because I know down by the high school it's 40 kilometers. So I sent an email about that a while ago and just wanted to follow up and see if there was an answer to that. Thank you.
Councilor Deutschman, through you, Chair. Councilor Deutschman, I don't have it in front of me today. I'll immediately go and check for that one. We'll have a response. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Only one other business. I want to really commend our water and wastewater services, the design and construction, the communications team, Kitchener staff for all of your efforts last week with the valve or pipe that we needed to do some work on. I really want to thank the area municipalities for recognizing the need to conserve our water and the community that did their part to ensure a smooth implementation and work. The other thing I do want to commend staff on is for the pedestrian bridge that was installed over the past weekend, the design and construction, the communications team, area municipalities with just the intense work that needed to be done. And thank you to the communications team for those videos. They were fabulous. So again, thanks to staff for all of the work to get these things addressed and accomplished the past 2 weeks. Okay, our next meeting is scheduled for September 10th, 2024. We will now move to adjourn. Is there a mover? Councillor Foxton, seconder. Chair Redmond. Okay, you'll be prompted in e-scribe.
Yeah. Oh, it's A&F. Nope, we don't get to go to dinner yet.
Michael has left the building.
That means Rob takes the chair.
Pardon?
That means Rob takes the chair.
That's carried. A&F will start in 5 minutes.